Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. It's hard to imagine the Super Bowl without car commercials. At Super Bowl XXV, which was the most recent Super Bowl at the time of this video, you had many different car companies dishing out at least $5 million, although oftentimes it was more than that, to advertise their company on television's biggest stage. Last year, companies like Cadillac, Ford, Toyota, Jeep, and General Motors, just to name a few, got in on the action. And this year, Nissan is going to join the fold, with reports saying that at Super Bowl 56, they're going to air a 60-second spot featuring Brie Larson. Which avenue they decide to go with the commercial remains to be seen. They could take the heartfelt route, as was the case in 2015 at Super Bowl 49, when they aired a very well-received commercial titled With Dad, which was about a family trying to balance work and family life, set to the iconic song Cats in the Cradle. That commercial was so well received that it was rated as one of the top ads of that entire game. They could take the funny route, as was the case in 1997 at Super Bowl 31, when they aired a commercial about pigeons trying to poop on a Nissan and being unable to do so. I promise you, the ad is not as bad as that sounds. It's actually pretty good. Or they could take the action route, which was what they did in 1990 at Super Bowl 24. The only problem with that route? The last time they tried it, it ended in disaster. It was so controversial that the ad aired just once, and then never aired again. And this is the story behind the controversy. Before I talk about the advertisement in question, we need some context to understand what Nissan was advertising, why they wanted to advertise at the Super Bowl, and how they were going to go about it. By the end of the 1980s, Nissan was in a bit of a pickle. This was a company that from 1962 on had experienced growth in the United States every single year for the most part. From 1962 to 85, in those 24 years, they grew in annual sales in 20 of them. And by 1985, Nissan was in a fantastic spot. Their company had grown over 20% in annual sales over the previous year. They had sold over 830,000 vehicles in the United States, which was their highest number by a lot. And their market share, which is a number indicating of the car sales in the United States, how many of them were Nissan, was 5.41%, which was one of their highest market shares ever. But after 1985, the company was in a state of decline, and their growth was non-existent. After selling over 830,000 vehicles in 1985, by 1988, it was at just 640,000. After having over 5.4% of the market share in 1985, by 1988, it was barely above 4%. And on a year-to-year basis, from 1987 to 88, their sales had dropped by 13.84%, which was their highest year-to-year sales dip in more than a decade, and one of the largest in the history of the company. In other words, all of these stats show that Nissan was in a bit of a predicament, and they needed to find a clever and creative way to increase sales and increase their presence in the United States. Naturally, one idea that the company had was to advertise at the Super Bowl. Now, Nissan had experience at the Super Bowl. At the most recent Super Bowl, which was the incredibly well-played down-to-the-wire Super Bowl between the San Francisco 49ers and Cincinnati Bengals, played in front of over 81 million viewers, Nissan aired two advertisements. One of them was called Gator Farm, and showed how a Nissan can hold an alligator, and the other one was called Succeed in Business, and showed the features that the car had. However, these ads didn't do a whole lot to move the needle. Not only were they pretty boring, especially the business one, but they did not stand out among the crowd. Remember that at this Super Bowl, every car company in the world seemed to be advertising. Alongside Nissan, you had Suzuki, Dodge, Hyundai, Volkswagen, Mazda, Cadillac, Mercedes, Volvo, and Toyota all airing ads. Good luck standing out without something really cool or innovative when your competition is that steep and that similar. So Nissan knew that at Super Bowl 24, they had to go big and make it count. If they were going to spend over $1.4 million on a 60-second spot, they had to make sure that it was money well spent. And with that, they got the best in the business. On July 10, 1989, just over 6 months before Super Bowl 24, Nissan unveiled the Z32-300ZX in Japan. While the first generation of the car, the Z31, had been in the United States since 1984, it was time to move on to a new generation. And after a launch in Japan, Nissan was going to have these cars in the United States for 1990. I'm not going to dive into the specifics of the car itself, but as you can probably expect when you want to launch a brand new car, you want to create an advertisement for it. And Nissan knew that if they were going to air an advertisement in Super Bowl 24, that it was going to be for this car. This was a sports car, so you want an exciting, action-packed ad to convey that messaging. You want the exact opposite of what you did in 1989, with two pretty lackluster and forgettable ads. And you can't fault Nissan for trying here, because they swung for the fences big time. Because the man that was going to direct this commercial was none other than Ridley Scott. This was the same Ridley Scott that directed Black Rain, which came out 4 months before the Super Bowl, grossed over $134 million, got back 4.5 times its budget, and hit #1 at the American box office for 3 weeks. This was the same Ridley Scott that directed Blade Runner, one of the greatest science fiction films of all time, with an unbelievable atmosphere and an unbelievable environment. Oh, and the last time he directed a Super Bowl ad, I'd say it came out pretty well. You've probably seen this ad before. He directed Apple's iconic 1984 ad, which is still regarded today as the greatest Super Bowl advertisement of all time, and was the ad that almost single-handedly changed the game and changed how companies advertise at the Super Bowl. I talked in depth about that commercial and the somewhat forgotten sequel to that commercial in a previous video of mine, so if you want to learn more about that, click the card in the upper right corner. At this point, it seemed like you had a recipe for success. You had a brand new sports car. You had Ridley Scott, one of the greatest and most iconic directors of all time. And even though you had a ton of car companies also airing advertisements during the Super Bowl, none of them were doing anything like this. This ad was hyped up, and even though the Super Bowl itself stunk, with the San Francisco 49ers repeating as champions and winning convincingly over the Denver Broncos by a final score of 55-10 in the biggest blowout in the history of the big game, people were watching for the commercials, and to see what Nissan and Ridley Scott could deliver. And safe to say, the commercial lived up to the hype.
So I'm having this dream. I'm in a Turbo Z. And these guys are after me. But they can't catch me. So they get a car. But they can't catch me. So they get a plane. Just as they're about to catch me, the twin turbos kick in.
Obviously, the bar was pretty high, and obviously, this didn't exactly top 1984. Then again, I'm not sure anything could top that ad. Having said that, yeah, this is a really good advertisement. It did everything that Nissan was looking for. It captured the feel of the car, and the message was incredibly simple and easy to understand. It was action-packed, and the stakes kept building and building, like any good commercial, and like 1984 did. The shot at the end where the car gets airtime is incredible, and the score, as is to be expected from anything Ridley Scott does, is fantastic and so retro-futuristic, and I love it. And even today, this ad holds up and is remembered fondly. There are 2 copies of this ad available on YouTube. Combined, as of this video, those 2 copies have amassed over 804,000 views. When a commercial from 3 decades ago is pulling in numbers like that and is still remembered all these years later, that is a really good sign. So it seemed like the ad was a success, right? It was money well spent, and now Nissan can continue to air this campaign and really push the Z32 across the United States. Well, not quite, because this ad only aired once. As it turned out, there was one small problem with the advertisement that you might have noticed. Before I go any further, I want to emphasize this. I really like this advertisement. I had no problem with the ad. This was not like a just for feet situation back at Super Bowl XXXIII, where anyone with eyes could have seen that there was a major problem with it. You can learn more about that disaster of an advertisement, widely regarded by many as the worst Super Bowl ad of all time, by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But there was a considerable amount of backlash over this advertisement, and you might have been able to see why. Because as it turned out, having an ad where you have a car racing against a motorcycle, and then another car, and then an airplane, and then the car goes as fast as possible and gets airborne, might promote speeding and unsafe driving. Now, there were ways that the advertisement could have gone around that. If this took place in a fictional setting and not in the middle of a desert, where theoretically anyone could go there and do this and test out how fast the car could go, then maybe there wouldn't have been an issue. If there was a disclaimer at the bottom of the screen, which there was not, that this was a professional driver on a closed course and you should not attempt this, then that could have helped. Why you wouldn't have that disclaimer period, I don't know. But the concern of a ton of organizations, including the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Government Employees Insurance Company, the American Motorist Insurance Company, and the National Association of Governors Highway Safety Representatives, among others, all protested the ad and asked that it not be shown. As Brian O'Neill, the president of the Insurance Institute, stated on the ad, "This is the worst example of an out-and-out speed ad that we have ever seen." Now, Nissan defended their advertisement, with Ronald Hannum, the director of marketing for the company, saying that this was clearly fictional. As he said, quite bluntly, "We don't believe that the Turbo Z commercial encourages irresponsible driving practices." And even though Beth Bresson, the vice president for program practices at CBS, which was the network televising the game, said that they would consider objections to the ad, they decided to run it and not let those companies get to them. But after the advertisement aired, even though a lot of people enjoyed it, and a lot of people thought that Nissan and Ridley Scott did a great job, the pressure was too much to handle. And so, the ad was pulled. Maybe it was because the backlash continued to mount after the advertisement was shown to an average of over 73 million people and a peak television audience of over 109 million people. Maybe it was because Nissan's belief that this was a clearly fictional and fanciful depiction wasn't as obvious when the advertisement actually aired. Maybe it was the fact that Nissan was scared that someone was actually going to try this and have someone go out in the open field with a motorcycle and the car set to the highest speed possible and race and have someone get injured and then be struck with litigation because there was no disclaimer or anything of that nature, and Nissan didn't want to have to deal with that potential headache and public relations nightmare. Whatever the case was, Super Bowl XXIV was the first and only time that this high-budget advertisement aired. It was pulled after just one viewing. Nissan continued to air Super Bowl advertisements after this. The controversy and backlash from the Ridley Scott ad didn't stop them from airing an ad for the Nissan Maxima at Super Bowl XXV the following year. Unfortunately, that ad was terrible, and was as low budget and as safe as possible. It's like they didn't even try with this one, and there was nothing whatsoever that indicates that this was a Super Bowl ad. It was the exact opposite of the last ad. They took a small hiatus from airing ads of the big game, and have since appeared sporadically at the Super Bowl, with the company set to make an appearance at Super Bowl 56. So what's the takeaway from this entire controversy? If you're going to do an advertisement like this where you want to showcase how cool your car is and how fast it can go, you better make sure it looks as fictional as possible, and you better make sure you put a disclaimer in there somewhere. And as much as I love this advertisement, and as much as I had no problem with it, I can definitely see why there was some criticism and some concern that this ad would promote reckless driving and would promote speeding. There were some very obvious steps that Nissan could have taken to avoid that backlash, and they seemed to take none of them. Still, despite the controversy, I think it's safe to say that considering how fondly remembered this advertisement is more than 3 decades later, Nissan definitely made those 60 seconds at Super Bowl XXIV count for something. Get your official Jaguar Gamer 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9, and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.